Hungarian folk tales. The lad who watched over the rabbits. Once upon a time, very long ago, and far away, there lived a king, and the king had a daughter, so beautiful that even the painters could not paint her beauty. Now there came a time for her to take a husband, and the king said that he would give her in marriage to the man who could catch the apple she threw among them. So they came together, the princes and the dukes, the counts and the gypsy lads, to catch the apple. But try as they would, not one of them succeeded. But one day who should turn up but a village lad? Once again the princess flung the apple, and the lad caught it as if it had been thrown straight to him. But the king was not overjoyed at this, that a come-and-go-as-he-pleases lad was to be his son-in-law. Well then, young fellow, I don't know what kind of lad you are to catch the apple, but there's another trial in store for you. I have rabbits aplenty, and you have to watch over them. If you can watch them carefully, well and good. But if you can't, then it's off with your head. Now the lad was downcast to hear that he had to watch over the rabbits, for never before had he been a watcher of rabbits. And all of a sudden, an old woman appeared. She said, "Don't be downcast, young fellow. I shall give you a whistle, and when you go off to the meadow, all you have to do is blow it, and you'll see how useful it will be." Then they let the rabbits out, and they ran off in 1,000 directions. The lad blew his whistle, and the rabbits lined up like soldiers on parade. The king looked out and wondered what kind of lad could keep the rabbits in devilish good order. So the king said to his daughter, "Listen, daughter dear, dress yourself up as a poor young woman and take a satchel with you to the meadow and ask the lad for a rabbit, so that in the evening when he brings them home, there'll be one rabbit missing." So the princess dressed herself up in the clothes of a poor young woman, put a satchel under her arm, and went out to the meadow. "Good day to you, good rabbit herd. God save you. What brings you here, young lady?" "I'm not a lady. I'm just a poor young girl. I came to see if you could give me a rabbit." "Of course I can," he said, "if your highness will give me a kiss." "I'm not a princess," said she. And she was really fierce in denying it because she didn't want the lad to know who she was. But he knew which way the wind was blowing. "Well, just one kiss and I'll give you a rabbit." So the princess thought for a moment, to kiss or not to kiss, but in the end, she gave him a kiss. Right away the lad took hold of a rabbit and put it in the satchel for her. So she set off home. But she hadn't got halfway home when the lad blew the whistle again, and the rabbit jumped out of the satchel and scampered back to him. The princess got home, and the king said to her, "Well, did you get a rabbit?" She looked in the satchel and, sure enough, there was nothing in it at all. So she said to her father, "I tried and I asked, but he didn't give me a rabbit," because she was ashamed to say that she had given him a kiss. So the king said, "Never mind, I'll try." So the king dressed up as a poor country lad and took a satchel, and off he went on a donkey to the meadow where the village lad was to be found. When he got there, he said, "God save you, young fellow. How goes it with you?" "Well enough," said the lad. "I have the rabbits to watch over. Have pity on me, young fellow, and give me a rabbit, for I'm as poor can be, and sick, and I need the meat of a rabbit to give me strength." "Willingly," said the lad, "if you kiss the tail of your donkey." So the king thought for a moment, and in the end he kissed the tail of the donkey. Well then, the lad gave him a rabbit. The king took the satchel under his arm and sat astride the donkey. But he hadn't got halfway home when the lad blew that whistle of his, and the rabbit jumped out of the satchel and left it as empty as the day is long. The king got home, opened the satchel, and saw not a rabbit there at all. The princess asked him, "Father dear, did you bring a rabbit?" "Of course I didn't bring one. He wouldn't give me one." Evening came, and the king looked out of the window to see how the lad had lined up the rabbits to come home. Like soldiers on parade, in they came, and all of them present and correct. "Well done, young fellow," said the king. "You've done a very good job. You've passed the test. Now there's one more for you, and if you pass that too, then you'll have my daughter as your wife. Now I want you to tell me as many lies as will fit in a sack." So the lad began to think about what lies he could tell. All the king's councillors sat around in a circle with the lad in the middle, and he started to tell lies. Well, he lied and lied about anything and everything that came into his head. But the king called out, "The sack's not full yet. Carry on with your lying." So he carried on. "Well, you know, when I was looking after the rabbits, the princess came to me and asked for a rabbit and gave me a kiss in return. Well, didn't the princess grow as red in the face as a rose in bloom? She couldn't get over her shame. And after that," said the lad, "the king himself came and I told him to kiss the donkeys." "It's full," shouted the king. "You don't have to say another word. A big sack full of lies." So the lad didn't say another word. And that's how the king gave his daughter to the lad, who watched over the rabbits. Together they lived happily and peacefully. And when the king died, the lad became king. His kingdom was so blessed that it's a pity he isn't still living today. And that's the end of my story. Hungarian folk tales. King Matthias and the Lamb with the Golden Fleece. The King of Prussia went to see King Matthias. They greeted each other as old friends, and the King of Prussia said, "I heard that you have a lamb with a golden fleece." "It is true. Among the many sheep in my flocks, I have a lamb with a golden fleece, and I have a shepherd who never tells a lie." To this the King of Prussia replied, "I will prove to you that you are wrong, for your shepherd does not always speak the truth." "This I will not believe," said King Matthias, "for my shepherd never lies." "I will prove to you that he does, for I will trick him so that he must." To this King Matthias replied, "I am so certain of his honesty that I will give you half my kingdom if he lies." The King of Prussia replied, "And I will give you half of mine if he does not." So they shook hands and bid each other good night, and the King of Prussia returned to his inn. There he changed his clothes into peasant's rags and went to work in the fields. Meekly he greeted the shepherd, and the shepherd replied, "Welcome, the Lord's blessing be on you, my king." "How do you know I am a king?" The shepherd replied, "I know from your words you are a king." To this the King of Prussia replied, "I will shower you in golden coins. I will give you 6 horses and the finest carriage if you give me the lamb with the golden fleece." "Oh, I could not do that, not for all the gold in the world, for King Matthias would have me hanged." The King of Prussia promised him riches and jewels, but the shepherd did not give in. The King of Prussia returned to his inn, hanging his head in sorrow. His daughter saw this and said, "Do not be sad, father. I will go myself, and I will take a coffer of gold coins and trick him myself." So the king's daughter took a coffer full of gold and a bottle of sweet wine with which to trick the shepherd. But the shepherd only answered that he had no need of money, and King Matthias would surely hang him if he lost the lamb with the golden fleece. But the girl persisted, and soon they had drunk the wine, though she had had to have the first sip to prove to him that she had not poisoned the wine. The shepherd was soon in such high spirits that he said he would give her the lamb with the golden fleece if she would spend the night with him. But he had no need of riches or gold, for he had riches enough. The girl did not hesitate, and she agreed to lie down with the shepherd. Then she said to him, "Skin the lamb and eat its meat, for I have no need of it. I need only its fleece." Brimming with joy, the girl took the fleece back to her home. Her father was overjoyed that his daughter had managed to trick the shepherd. But morning came, and the shepherd was very sad, for he did not know what to say to his king. And as he walked, he stuck his crook in a hole in the ground, hung his hat on its end, stepped back, and greeted it as if it were the king. The king, or rather the shepherd's hat, asked, "What news do you bring me from the fields?" To this the shepherd replied, "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece is gone, for it was eaten by a wolf." And the shepherd shook with fear. "You lie, for the wolf would have eaten the rest of the flock as well." The shepherd took his crook under his arm and set off again towards the castle. He ambled and rambled along, and he soon came across another hole in the ground, where he stuck his crook in the hole and hung his hat on the end and greeted the figure of the king. "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece stumbled into the well and drowned." "You lie," said the king, "for the others would have drowned too." So the shepherd carried on until he found a third hole in the ground, where he stuck his crook in the hole and hung his hat on the other end, and for the third time he greeted the figure of the king. "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece has been stolen." "You lie," said the king, "for the others would have been stolen too." So for the third time he took his crook from the ground and continued on his way to the castle of King Matthias. In the castle the king was seated at the table together with the King of Prussia and his daughter. The shepherd humbly approached and greeted the two kings and the girl. But the King of Prussia had already given King Matthias the fleece of the golden lamb, and now all three were waiting to see if the shepherd would lie or tell the truth. For if he lied, King Matthias would lose half his kingdom. King Matthias asked, "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that I exchanged the lamb with the golden fleece for a beautiful black sheep." King Matthias was overjoyed, but he replied, "Bring this black sheep to me." But the shepherd answered, "She is sitting right there between the two kings." "Well done," said King Matthias, "for you have told no lies, and today I give you half of the lands belonging to the King of Prussia." "And I shall give you my daughter's hand in marriage," said the King of Prussia, "for you already know the taste of each other's lips." And this is how King Matthias Shepherd rose to become the King of Prussia. Hungarian folk tales. The Pussycat Princess. Once upon a time there lived a king, and the king had 3 sons. All 3 princes were of marrying age, and so their father told them to find themselves wives. He threw 3 sticks in the air, 1 for each son, and said, "Wherever your stick falls is where you find your bride." The eldest son's stick fell towards a young baroness. The middle son's stick fell towards a young countess, while the youngest son's stick fell towards the dark forest. The young men all left the palace, but the youngest one was very sad. He had no idea how he would find a bride in the thick forest. And as he was walking in the forest, he met a small pussycat that walked behind him. The young prince spoke to the pussycat and said, "My royal father told me to travel to these parts where I would find my bride, but I can't see a girl anywhere near. Don't worry, I will marry you." The prince could not return home until he promised to marry the pussycat. The other princes had already arrived back, and their father asked them each what they thought of their bride. The eldest one said that he found a baroness, and the middle son said that he found a countess, while the youngest one asked them to wait and see. Then the king ordered all the 3 grooms to fetch a beautiful bouquet from their beloved. The 2 elder ones went happily, but the youngest one was very sad. When he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a bouquet from our fiancés? Now what could I bring from a pussycat?" "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." Then the pussycat scratched a tree and many more pussycats appeared. One of them brought silver flowers, another golden flowers, and a third brought diamond flowers, and the bride arranged them all in a beautiful bouquet. The other 2 princes were already at home when the young prince arrived late. The king said that the bouquets were truly beautiful, but the most beautiful of all belonged to the youngest son. They all asked him to tell the name of his bride-to-be, but he asked them to wait and see. Days passed and soon became a week when the king ordered his sons to go to their brides and fetch a handkerchief each. The young princes all left, but the youngest one was very sad. By the time he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a handkerchief from our fiancés? but a pussycat cannot weave. Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest. The pussycat scratched the tree, and once again more pussycats appeared. One brought silver yarn, another brought golden yarn, and a third gave diamond yarn, and the pussycat bride wove them together. When he arrived at the palace, the king inspected all 3 handkerchiefs. He told the eldest boys that theirs were quite pretty, but he told the youngest son that his was the prettiest of all. Weeks passed and soon became a month when the king told his sons to bring their fiancées to the palace. The 2 elder boys went happily for their spouses, while the youngest one became sadder than ever before. How could he possibly take the pussycat home? His pussycat bride was already waiting for him at the edge of the forest. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to fetch our brides? Now how can I present a pussycat at the palace?" "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." The youngest prince thought he would never sleep, but at last he succumbed and fell into a slumber. When he awoke, he was very worried, but the young princess told him it was she in the guise of a pussycat whom he had betrothed, but she had been under a curse to live like that until a young man asked for her hand in marriage. "I was a pussycat, and you asked me to marry you, so I turned back into a princess." A wonderful coach awaited them, with proud coachmen and fine horses, so the prince sat in the carriage with his princess and travelled back to the palace in regal style. The wedding party was already underway at the palace when the guards came to the king and told him that a king had arrived from another country. When the young couple arrived, the king soon saw that they were his son and his beautiful bride. They were all amazed to discover that the youngest prince's bride was the most beautiful of them all. Then they all sang and danced and danced and sang until the wedding party was done. And this is where my story ends.